Is it just me, or have garages in the Need for Speed series just been getting progressively smaller and less thought out from game to game? I mean, at this point, the next game is going to feature our cars being stored in either a shed or a cardboard box. Dev's choice, I guess. Like, let's look back at even just the predecessor to Unbound, which was Heat. We had the option to see our different cars and builds in the background, which may not seem like a big deal in the grand scheme of things, like the entire franchise being spit on, but if we compare the garage we got in Unbound to the one we got in Heat 3 years before, it's pretty much night and day. Which, funny enough, is another option that somehow did not make it to Unbound. But hey, that's a whole other topic, right? Even small things like us having an animation when we were going out of the garage, that changed my life, man. That animation made me feel special, and it made my car look amazing, even though some of the wraps I had on the cars were interesting to say the very least. All I'm saying is that I think there needs to be a little bit more focus on the garages in the next game, especially if we take into consideration that majority of players will spend a significant amount of time in there, either customizing their rides, upgrading different cars, or even just sitting in there for no reason, which is what a lot of Unbound players like to do in free roam for some reason. I'm thinking that there can be different garages for different things, and that may seem a little unnecessary, but give me the time of day and I promise it will make sense. Maybe. The first garage type will be the one everyone knows and loves, the one that you can spawn into when starting up the game before going into the free roam world. Now, what Heat did was amazing, and I took that as a base for what I would want going forward. I think the starting area is fine. You should be able to see 8 to 10 of your different cars behind the car you are currently working on. I believe that the devs should let the players choose as well what cars they would like to see, and to also bring back the option of whether the player wants to see their crew's cars in the background or their own specific cars. When going to each one of the cars behind you, it will flash not just performance stats, but I think what would help a lot of players is what is also currently on the car part wise. That way you can see if the build is a short track build, a long track build, an off-road build, a drift build, or a grip build. Things like that. A quick quality of life feature that will save players a lot of time in the long run, because having to scroll from build to build in Unbound can be a pain, especially if someone has started a race or event and you want to be ready. The next feature for that garage is that there should be a section where you can put any car on the dyno to test its current performance. This idea also goes into another feature of letting players test out different cars and parts for those cars for around a minute before making the purchase. Crew Motorfest currently does this without the parts option, and it has personally saved me from making some pretty bad and expensive purchases. But how the dyno would work is that it would tell the player the outcome of whatever combination of parts they have put on the vehicle, and yes, there should be an actual animation that would play. This can be skipped for those who are impatient or are just trying to get the stats quickly, but I think it would be cool if the stats were not immediately available when putting a bunch of different parts on, or the stats are estimates for parts, but when you take it to the dyno, those estimated stats get replaced with the actual stats of the car. If you look at garages that work on cars in real life, there are dyno machines, typically in a different section of the garage. Why not add something like that into the garage for the next game, when we are in that space modifying cars anyway? On top of this, the dyno being in Need for Speed is not even new. It was featured in Underground 2, and that would be a very solid base to build upon. How the dyno worked back then with all the different stats doesn't need to be replicated, but the whole idea of having a machine to test your car should be there, especially in a game named Need for Speed. Now, another difference is how the main garage would work during a police chase. Remember how I said that there should be different garages for different things? I propose that this garage doesn't work like others before it, in the sense that you cannot go into this garage with any sort of heat level. It does not matter what level it is or how many cops are following you. This may be going too deep, but if we really think about it, if a cop sees you going into the same spot repeatedly or sees you disappear in the same area multiple times, why would they not investigate that spot? You would think that since a legit business is ran from these main garages 9 times out of 10 in this Need for Speed storyline, you would want law enforcement not to be snooping around. So what I think is, the only time that you can go into these garages is when you are not wanted and possess no heat level. These garages would focus on customization, upgrading cars, and typical things like that. This would not include buying the cars, because I do think the option Heat gave us to go to the dealership was unmatched, and I hate that they took that experience away from us with the shortcut version now. Sure, it may be convenient with what we have now, but the dealership will forever be in my heart. Now, I can already tell what question you guys are asking, And that is, if we cannot use the main garage for escaping the cops, then what do we do? And to that question, I answer with a new type of garage that would function as your getaway hideout. Once again, I think that the main garage that houses your main operations and the getaway hideout garage should be two completely different buildings. The hideout garage could be used to repair your car, refill on tech used to help escape the cops, and just get away from the cops in general. But it would not possess any of the other options that the regular garage does. This is done for a reason, because you are only there to escape the cops. So it would logically only be used to house things that can help illegal street racers in the best way possible. You are not concerned with if your car can look good with a bod body. You are not concerned with taking out one engine and putting another one in. You are just trying to get away from the cops. These garages are designed to house you temporarily while you are on the run. Another thing is that you wouldn't be able to fast travel to these spots either, and they are only available on the map when you are actively being pursued. Otherwise, you would just go back to the regular garage. While sitting in these hideouts, you can also see other players who are sitting there to escape as well, and it will have their current rank, basic car stats, how many escapes and busts they have, the amount of rep and money they escaped with, and also the heat level that they just escaped from. Unfortunately, you would have to buy these garages as well, but you will be given two from the start of the game, so that way it isn't too easy nor too tough to really get started with cop chases. Me personally, I wouldn't make them super expensive, especially since you most likely won't be starting with a bunch of money unless you're on PC and you're over there modding the game. Maybe around a few $100,000 each, depending on the current money situation for the next game. If it is anything like the beginning of Unbound, then that price would have to come down. But if it was as easy as Heat, then I think the price would be cool. Of course, bigger hideouts would require more bread to be thrown at them, and you would still need to pay to refill what resources the hideout has for you, such as refilling your pursuit tech and things of that nature. But each hideout could feature its own perks and other benefits depending on the price. For example, a hideout priced at $500,000 could feature a perk where you get an additional piece of pursuit tech for each item you have when getting into another police chase. Or it could have the ability to refill a certain piece of equipment over time without you having to actually pay. Anyway, the main gimmick is you would instantly lose your wanted level when entering, just like before in other games. However, the takeaway from that is that if a cop sees you in their direct line of sight entering that garage, then a meter will appear beside the icon of whatever garage you're in. If a cop sees you enter that garage too many times, I'm thinking around maybe 5 or 6 times, then that hideout becomes a stakeout, meaning that you can no longer enter it and it will be on lockdown status by the cops for a certain amount of time while they quote unquote investigate. If you try and enter while it is in that status and you have an active wanted level, then you will be busted instantly. This would only apply to you and no other players around the map in multiplayer. The last type of garage that could be cool to see is the event garage, where it is different from the meetups in Unbound. In meetups, you can start races and other events, but in the event garage, you can start up car meets, car shows, and crew takeovers. You know, things like that, things that should be in Need for Speed, especially with the car culture. There is no designated spot for members of a crew to come together, and I know a lot of people desire that in a game as car culture focused as Need for Speed. This garage would probably feature a lot of the same things as the main one, but I think it would feature a bigger layout, similar to the meetups, and players would also be able to see other members that are there just like in Unbound. Instead of bios, it could be stats such as their win-loss ratio, how much money they have had total in the game, you know, fun facts like that. Also, I think it would be really nice to maybe feature a podium in this garage that could come in handy when picking members who won the car meet or for showing off each individual car when it is their turn in the car show. These garages would only be available if you have no active wanted level as well, just like the main garage. But let me know what you guys think of these ideas. I just really want things to be more fleshed out for the next game and not get any blander than they already have. The change from Heat to garages to Unbound garages was criminal. It should not happen again. If you enjoyed, make sure to go ahead and drop a like and subscribe, and I will see you all in the next video.